Hello, friends. This is Tillery, Tim and Sims coming to you again from the Jackalope Creative Studios here in Lubbock, Texas, on behalf of the Sandhill Area Research Association. This is another episode of Conservation Stories, and we have a returning guest, but she's in a new role. And I am excited to talk to her about the new role. So this is Liz Hirschfield. Last time we talked to you, Liz, you had left J.Crew Madewell. Mm-hmm. You were working with them on different types of sustainability, for lack of a better word, projects. And then you became your own consultant. And then Lacey and I were like high-fiving when we heard that you are now with Cotton Incorporated.
Cotton Council International.
Cotton Council International. Oh, sorry. Actually, last night I thought, there is a really good graphic that shows like all of the different.
I have it. It's great.
It's fabulous. Okay, yeah. So we might share that with our listeners so that they will understand why I get confused.
Totally, and it happens all the time. Yeah, and we're sister organizations and work closely together, so it's not offensive at all.
All of them work closely together.
Yes,
and there are a lot of them.
Yeah. So I'm executive director of Cotton Council International, which is actually sits under the National Cotton Council and is what's considered the import leg of National Cotton Council. So really working to make sure that we're growing demand for U.S. cotton. And we've got teams, over 70 people working in over 15 countries around the world, work really closely with the suppliers, the folks that are buying cotton, Foreign Agriculture Service U.S. government offices in these countries to help bring down trade barriers, work on issues, promote U.S. cotton, talk about why it's the best cotton in the world, it's most sustainable, most traceable, all the things, right? And it really is something that, did not occur to me in terms of this transition in my career. And as you mentioned, when I was at J.Crew, we obviously got to know you and Lacey and everyone in the industry through the work that we did with regenerative agriculture and working really closely in the U.S. Cotton industry. And from that got really connected to the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, which is also under the NCC umbrella. And when I left J.Crew and started my consulting business, actually Cotton Council International asked if I would come speak at some of their events in Asia, which we have events all over, the world almost every month, right? For a multitude of different reasons, like workshops, trainings, delegations, just really keeping the energy up around. And I did that and I actually didn't know a lot about CCI when I went on these trips. And I learned so much about what they do. And I thought to myself, gosh, I wish I knew this organization exists when I was on the brand side, because I could have been really helpful as we were trying to nominate U.S. cotton and having people tell us it was too expensive and all of these things. This year I kind of had reached out and said, hey, what are some of the speaking opportunities this year? Because I really enjoyed it. And I was told the executive director who was in the position was retiring and asked if I'd like to interview for the role. And I thought, gosh, that's such an interesting idea. I never really thought about it, and it just ended up being the right thing. It was really great. I feel like closing the loop on my career, really, the final kind of, the fashion industry for so long, sustainability, and then, cotton and agriculture now really being in that community. And it's really exciting. And one of the reasons they really liked my background is that I have that brand background, right? Which is kind of, we know is very important nowadays. Yes. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here. So
I'm so excited about it. And of course there's a lot of, concern right now about the markets, and we have some beautiful cotton that's being harvested right now.
It's a good year, right?
It's, just beautiful, good year, and such bad prices. It is a shame. I was talking to someone the other day who was saying I think that the AgriLife budgets were showing like irrigated cotton was the only thing drip irrigated cotton was the only thing that was showing potential profitability.
Interesting.
So it's
really unfortunate. I think there's a lot of good energy. I think that, with the farmer support programs and things that passed in the last bill that passed this past summer, I felt that was the first bright shining light a little bit on the road to recovery. There's so much energy around, really building demand. And obviously, the trade situation has been challenging, but it seems like there's going to be some bright spots coming up. And we're really focused on, growing demand, honestly, to be really quite frank, outside of China, because we don't want to be reliant on just one country. And so there's an amazing team that has, worked for this organization for decades in every country, super passionate. And we're really, really diving into a very detailed strategy about how we really grow demand. And a lot of these other countries are now starting to really want to buy U.S. cotton that hadn't maybe been buying as much of it in the past. So
yeah, and I think part of I think what so many things are connected, and I think if we were able to help move some things back to some parts south of us, to help build up economies down there, it sure would gives people more reason to stay there. I agree. There's jobs and there's a life to be lived there, and so it would be great to see some of that happen, and return back to that region. And it's not nearly as far.
I agree. And you're talking about Latin America. Yeah?
Exactly.
Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a lot of interest in Latin America. When I was early on in my career, I started working in the industry when we still had all the denim mills in, North Carolina, and we did most of our denim production was in this hemisphere, and I saw it all leave, and it's really sad. But the capabilities are still there, and it's a really great place to produce. And I've always produced there, but a lot of brands haven't. And so because when, quota went away and brands just moved all their production, and like a lot of folks that now are managing that work have never done production in this region. And so the big unlock for them is actually finding garment manufacturers to work in, because they don't know where to go. And the thing that's really exciting that our team is doing, and like I mentioned, pretty much everyone on the team has been with the organization for decades. And we have an amazing director who's over that region, Mexico, Central South America, who's been with the organization for decades and really knows everything about it. And so she has started taking like brands on sourcing tours, to helping them connect the dots to find
fabulous.
out, because that's what's really, really it's something we're offering to brands. But we also do sourcing fairs, and we do one every year in that hemisphere. We just did one. It was in Costa Rica, but you bring all the suppliers together, bring the brands there, and they have like these kind of speed dating meetings, and people really want to move product back here, right? And so I think it's really exciting. One of the things, missing pieces, right? There's not a great availability of heather yarns anymore. There's not a great availability of like the kind of trims and stuff that you need, but they are there. And we're starting to talk to some of the spinners to say like, hey, we can get a collective of brands that would commit to, volume if you can start spinning heather yarns again. And the brands really need like places to buy buttons and zippers and like paper tags, and those exist. We just have to put it together. So we're really focusing on a more holistic perspective on how do you help the brands source their full product versus, and then that in turn increases, obviously the use of US cotton. So,
yeah. So two things, you said heather. Did you say?
Yes.
Tell us what that is.
Heather yarns. So a heather yarn is basically, when you buy something that looks like it's kind of speckled a little bit, it's oftentimes in athletic wear, but it's in other things, it feels like it's like maybe crossed like a gray and a white. It has like a little bit of a texture to it. That's a heather yarn. And it's very specific, right? Okay. And even in Asia, there's only a handful of suppliers who make them, but they're big and they offer like big volume, but they tend to have really high minimums and they're hard for brands to get into. Okay. But I think, in this case, and they're hard to do. So I think the demand went down, and the spinners in the US just kind of stopped doing them because they didn't have the demand. But we do have brands that are really interested, and I think we could get a collective together to say, hey, like the demand could be there, bring it back, right? So, and even they would commit to some basic colors like blue, gray, and maybe black or something, Right. But yeah, and you can make we call a fake heather, but you cross it with a synthetic, and it makes it look like a heather, but they want real cotton. Yeah. So it's possible.
What are they going to make out of these? What type of?
They'll make, garments? The brands have actually been interested in are kind of the athletic brands that are starting to actually, a lot of these big athletic brands are starting to move, not change their remit, but also add in this kind of more lifestyle collection, kind of like how Vuori has been really come on, right? And so there's more cotton in it. They want like, maybe like loose sweatshirts and things you can wear out, a little bit dressier, but like you're not going to go work out in it, but even for workout clothes, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I just this morning saw a video. I think it's Cotton. Maybe it's Cotton Inc. I think has a video on just the waste from synthetic fibers, and how much that is leaving in our water supply. And and there's so much more science now behind just the problems that these synthetics are causing, and the disruptions that they're making to the hormone system and that kind of thing. And so it's really kind of to say,
I agree.
What I mean?
I agree. Yeah.
But it's also really cool to be living in an area that can provide a solution.
Agree, 100%.
And it's interesting to me. This is just another place where I have seen like this awareness, kind of a global awareness, how we have moved from like farmers, you're the problem, to like, oh, you're actually the solution.
Yes, exactly. I love it. And I'm in Memphis right now. We just finished a farm tour with U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol members, some not, some interested in it. And they were just blown away. None of them only one had ever been to a farm in the United States before, and most hadn't even been to a farm. And they were so inspired and couldn't believe just what went into actually farming the cotton and all the technology and how advanced the U.S. industry is. Yeah. And they left like super excited. So it was really fun to see.
Well, and I think, this has come up in the podcast before because we've talked about the trust protocol, and of course, you and I have discussed like all the various certifications. Several years ago was maybe not really that long ago about the fraud, and that was coming out in India. And so, I mean, I think, if brands, the way to get what you want as a brand is to find the farmer that's doing what you want, which was, I saw the vision that you were building while you were at J.Crew Madewell. And to me, it's like, it has to be a relational thing, because you need to know and be able to trust that farmer is doing for you what they say they're doing. And I think, I would say, in other countries where you have, people that are like, it's just 1 acre at a time, or a half an acre, or 5 acres, and people are still doing things by hand, it's easy for them as a collective to be taken advantage of, and so
I agree.
I feel like if brands really want the assurance that they're getting what they're looking for, then this is the place to come. We're not having deforestation issues.
I agree. There's not forced labor issues. I mean, there's just so many things that like you just don't have to worry about, which I think it's a huge plus, outside of a farming practices and how advanced they are, right? And all the sustainability stuff. So,
well, I had, this is my ADD brain always thinking about people. So not long ago, we had a fellow recorded an episode of the podcast on H2A laborers. And so the program that he's running is, I don't know, to me, it's unique. Maybe there's other people doing it. It's a nonprofit. And there was a man in I can't remember if he was in Guatemala or mostly in Mexico. And he saw his neighbors being trafficked, cartel coming in and saying, hey, H2A, whatever. And then they're trafficking these people. And he was like, the only way to do this is like to set up something so they can do this, but they can do it like legally. And then we know that they're safe. And so, so this company in California, they partner with, this guy on the ground to help them. And then not only are they doing that, they're like, okay, industry, what exactly do you need us to train for?
Amazing.
And
that's
so
great.
They trained them very specifically. One of my favorite things that he said was, like part of what we help them understand is that why are we working so hard? Why are we working so many hours? Why are we working on Sunday? And to help them understand that like when the produce is ready, it has to get out. And otherwise, then, there won't be another job for them to come back to next year.
Right.
And then they work to make sure that those families stay in contact with each other. And then they invest in those communities, and so it would be an interesting,
it's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool? That because here, like H2A, even just for consistent labor, like the tractor driver and, the person that it's somebody you need year round, that is just increased so much. I'm seeing it in the cotton world. Increasing use of H2A. And boy, wouldn't it be a fun thing to like, hey, where one of those mills is going in, can we also set up a program to bring some of those folks that need jobs as H2A laborers into the trained and into the States?
I love that. It's a great idea. Yeah. It's fast. It's a really cool program. I love it. It's so smart. And the training piece of it is huge.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot will come from South Africa and because they have some of those, skills, and it's just easier. But it sure would be, if we wanted to expand that, and we want people to be able to stay in their communities. I mean, people, they come here because it's necessary for them to leave.
Yes.
And so if we can make it where it's not necessary for them to leave, and I have speaking as from someone who has an internationally adopted child, I saw the trauma of leaving of the culture that you're born into, and so it is a trauma, I think, that's unrecognized, when you leave behind, maybe not because you're choosing to, but because you feel like you have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. That's definitely something that's not talked about a lot.
Yeah. I know years ago, I visited with a man who's retired from the Foreign Ag Service, and he talked about how when, all of that's left, particularly somewhere, I can't remember the countries he named down in South America, but they were making all of our t-shirts, cotton t-shirts and cotton underwear and cotton socks and all these things. And then it became part of the White House trade negotiations. Like all of a sudden that was, instead of the Foreign Ag Service dealing with those things, it became a tool for political. And so they wound up, that's how kind of all that got shifted, and then so now you can just see like how the dominoes have fallen and where we are. It's just weird how choices always have unexpected consequences.
Always. They do. You don't know them until they happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
I know.
Exactly. So I'm hearing we would like to increase, if we could increase the use of cotton by 3%.
Yeah.
This is a thing. Tell us about this 3% thing.
Well, I think it's just like, obviously we talked about synthetics and they've really taken over, and, there's a lot of reasons why. And I think we just need to take a little bit of that market share back. We don't need half of it. We just need a little bit, right? So that 3% would dramatically just get us to a place where we're kind of like consistently, selling, 15, 16 million bales a year without any, hopefully, weather issues, right? That would prevent that from happening, because we know we had some issues in the past few years. So the idea of just like, and I think the one thing to be really clear on, like CCI as an organization, and I think this, like we can't control the global economy, right? We can't control what's happening in the fashion industry. And if business starts to downtrend, they start to buy less, and that's going to impact us, right? So there's things we know that are very much out of our control. But despite that, we want to still really kind of focus in and see how we can continue to grow U.S. cotton. And I will say it's been really enlightening and exciting as we've been to some of these countries, right? We went to Pakistan this past summer, and they're very quickly becoming the number 2 purchaser of U.S. cotton, and they love U.S. cotton. They love it. They buy a lot of Brazilian cotton too. And, but our team, we have a really great team they're called the solutions team, and they're technical experts, and they do go in to mills and spinners and help them process U.S. cotton so they can understand the value of it. And ultimately, it usually ends up being less expensive or at least cost neutral, because the quality is so superior that you get more from, you get a better yield from it. And a lot of these mills and spinners don't know how to do that. And so like our solutions team has spent more time in Pakistan than anywhere, because once one mill owner sees the success, they're like, oh, you got to get this guy in. And that's just a service that we offer, right? And we offer it only if they're running U.S. cotton, and generally if they're U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol members, because we're really trying to build that up. And so that's something that we're really trying to increase exposure to and really market, because it's something that a lot of folks don't know now that brands are so focused in on where their cotton's coming from, that also obviously price right now. This is something they're very interested in engaging us with to help go to, their mills and spinners. And so that's just a little piece of kind of the work that we're doing. But that supports brands, right? So I said, like, I wish I knew about CCI when I was on the brand side. I'm like, I wish I knew I could have sent this team into the mill that was telling me U.S. cotton's too expensive, right? So that is fascinating. So you're really helping them go in and figure out how to really utilize it in a way that really helps them economically. Totally helps them compete, and it helps them. It helps. It's not even that it helps them economically, but it really helps U.S. cotton, because then they see the value in buying it, because they also know that it's better quality. You talk to all of them, and they know when they process. Australia, I would say, is the closest to our quality, right? But other origins, like, they have trouble with it's inconsistent. That's the issue, right?
So
U.S. cotton is so consistent, right?
What is it that we do that creates that consistency?
Well, it's the classing, USDA classing. It's the fact that we've pretty much rid pests, right, from, the boll weevil and all those things. So you see in other, like, I will say, like in Brazil, the cotton can be really sticky a lot because they have not eradicated pests. They've not eradicated the boll weevil. It can be inconsistent. It's not quite, it has like yellow tinge to it somehow. And that's actually that's just like a regional thing. We believe that's like something in their soil. And the thing is that sometimes the mills and spinners who buy it are happy with it, and sometimes they're not. And I think that's the thing that's the biggest unlock, is that, but they never have to worry about U.S. cotton because it's always consistent. They know it,
Wow.
So, and there's a lot of other things too that we're starting to work on that we're hearing from the industry saying like, hey, like the spinners in this country, they're buying too high of quality. They're trying to make OE yarns. They don't need to spend that much money. Like, so let's train them on what they need to buy. So all these things help create demand because then they just see the benefit of it and they're like, great, it's consistent. I can rely on it. The quality is great. The brands want it. So it makes it easier,
Right. Well, one of the things I have heard before, and I mean, a lot of what I go on is just like secondhand knowledge because we never grew organic cotton, but is that the amount that's available is not always consistent. And so it's hard for brands to really, and I haven't looked at prices, so I don't know what the price of organic cotton is. If it's still, I mean, at one time it was like
it's
twice.
Usually high.
Yeah. It's usually high. Are you seeing any interest, like when you're out in fields or you're talking to, where are we on this organic? Because I mean, it seems like now you don't hear as much about organic as you do what people are calling regen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's because regen's just more scalable and it's more realistic. And as we know, organic's hard. And I think there's a place for it. Mm-hmm. It's tough in the US because with the size of the farms just makes it difficult. It's easier in us countries with these smallholder farms. It is expensive. There's always a premium. It can, the quality can vary a lot. And so it's very niche in my opinion. And there's some brands that go after it like big time and some that just like has a place, but it's not something the regenerative thing is much more scalable for them and easier, from their perspective.
So what is it that brands and retailers believe about regen that makes it so appealing to them?
I think, well, look, and this is not good, but because we want it to be different, is right now there's not a huge price difference, right? There's maybe a very nominal price difference in that conventional. It should be a little higher. I've always said I think it should sit in between conventional and organic, and there should be like a higher price for it. So obviously they like that. It feels like it's more readily available. They like the idea of like the practices and like being able to kind of see that, right? And there's certain brands that are like, no GMO seeds, no, synthetic anything. And I think that's tough in the US, right? And that's never going to happen.
I mean, what is that? Like Turkey? Where can you go to get non-GMO, legit non-GMO?
Well, I don't think it's in a country, but I think it's in a certain type of practice. So like it's inorganic. Organic doesn't allow GMO seeds, right? And so there are some countries in the EU that like don't want anything GMO. And I get it with like food, but like that kind of is like almost going too far with cotton, right? And so when these folks come on these farm tours, they really learn a lot about it. I mean, when I first started learning about it originally with the regenerative program, I thought it should be organic and I thought there should be no GMO seeds. I had no idea what I was talking about. And then I started to meet farmers and talk to them and learn more. It all became quite clear that like, okay, I get it. I understand it. And there's a lot of misnomers in the industry and the world about like what that means. So, so I think it's just still it's very niche. And I don't think it's that type of stuff is going to scale that much as the people want it to. And that's why I think regenerative to me is about like progress and you kind of ease into these farming practices that help your soil be more healthy. And then hopefully you don't need as many inputs because your soil is healthy and all these things, are happening. But you still need to have the ability to use them if something's going on. So
I've said this before, like I saw a can of soup at Sprouts that was $7. It was a regen, and then the $3 like that was organic, and then the $1 that was conventional. And I was like, no one's probably getting paid for that.
No, to 100%, right?
And somebody's just buying a label, and they don't have any. Now, I will say, like with Regenified, I feel like now that's here you have a USDA like kind of stamp of approval
it's
for.
Real. Yes,
that's a real certification. And so part of the issue I think is just this amount of these certifications, and
there's too many,
the people that are making the money are the people in the middle that are providing
paid
the services.
Certifications.
Yeah.
And there's definitely something being left out there. I agree. I agree.
Now, recently I had a conversation with a guy who was like, plant trees, and you guys out there just need to take up all your cotton. We just plant all these trees, and you plant these trees, and we're going to pay you 25% of what it's worth for carpet.
You're like, great. That's such a great thing. What an awesome opportunity.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, how do we get rid of you and just plant trees if this is that big of a deal,
Yeah.
And so it's just funny to me to think that, people still perceive the industry as, people that aren't business focused. And as we get
Agree.
longer, further down the road of industrialization, it's, if you aren't focusing on those numbers,
You have to. It's like anything, you have to. We were talking at Sourcing Fair to a brand and about all the work that we're doing and the work that we're doing, the Buy American Cotton Act and all these things that are going on to create like more demand for U.S. cotton. And
I don't know about this act, so we'll have to come back to that.
Okay. They said isn't it going to make the price go up? And I said, yes, and it needs to go up because the cost to produce cotton is like 30% under what it is selling right now. And if you want cotton to be around, you need to be able to pay a fair price for it. And by the way, the price that needs to go up to is not something outrageous for a brand, right? At all. Now, of course, they're absorbing all these tariffs right now, so anything is a lot for them. But that they really understood it. They said, "Okay, we get it." Obviously, the industry can't sustain on it, right? It needs to be a realistic price. So,
Buy American Cotton Act.
Yeah, this is something that obviously we sit under NCC, and NCC is been working really closely on, and it's just a piece of legislation that's hopefully going to be put forth
National Cotton Council.
Congress. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Put forth through Congress, and it's just really offering a tax credit to brands who use U.S. cotton. And now that we have traceable cotton and where cotton came from, it's just incentivizing the use of U.S. cotton. And it has a bunch of different tiers in terms of if you're just taking the cotton and exporting it out to another country and then bringing it back, versus like you get a lot larger credit if you make it all in the United States, right? Or if you're using U.S. yarn or U.S. fabric, because of course we really, and I did kind of miss that when I was talking a little bit about our solutions team. Like we really want to grow the business in this hemisphere, and like even if like manufacturing in its old form doesn't come back to the volume that it did used to be in the U.S. I think manufacturing in Latin America and South America is really great for U.S. cotton and U.S. yarn spinners and being able to grow that. So it's exciting. There's no we don't know what's going to happen with it, but obviously I think that it's something that could be very bipartisan because there's blue and red states and blue and red representatives and across the states that farm cotton, and there's no reason to be opposed to it. So but exciting.
And if you've got two things I'd love for you to share with us, and then we'll get those shared, is the diagram, the family tree of all of the organizations. That'd be great. But also I'd love to, read into that some and give our listeners and followers some more info. And we have in the past helped people just like, here's how you say, please support this.
Yes, 100%. And that's definitely something we're trying, getting brands and like local businesses and stuff to kind of sign up to say we support it is going to be really important too. But the team at NCC is working diligently as well as industry, right? Because within the industry, there's a lot of folks that have government affairs teams. So there's a lot of positive momentum around it, So hopefully when things kind of get a little more settled on the government side, it can go through.
Yeah. That would be exciting. That's really great. And it's always, especially during this time, it's always nice to see something that everybody supports and we get something done.
Yes. Right. Yeah. That everyone can agree on.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. And I really appreciate, as always, enjoy visiting with you and hear what's happening and all that kind of stuff. And we'll make all those, that information available to our peeps. Is there any other, information or anything that you think that folks need to know about that would be helpful to them to understand, like maybe even just the health benefits of cotton and what to look for? Like I know, when you go to Walmart now, I don't know if people will notice, but it says it's BCI. I think it's better cotton, right? And so which is its own separate one of the many certifications. And apparently that is who Walmart works with, because I see it on their brand. Most of their Walmart brands will say that.
Yes.
They
do. They've been pretty big with them for a long time. But I think there's a lot of health benefits for cotton, just in terms of every fabric sheds, but cotton biodegrades, right? You're never hearing about cotton fragments in someone's brain or, whatever that is.
Right.
I think the health and then the environmental benefits, when you see these mounds of clothing and like landfills, if those were all cotton, they would not be there because they would be biodegrading. Right. And so the synthetics just overtaking us has been really challenging. And look, I always say, in my sustainability journey, when you think about plastic and all those things, we need all those things in our lives. They serve a purpose. Synthetics serve a purpose. You need them to, if you're doing like high intensity exercise, if you're hiking Mount Everest, you need those things. But they've started to appear in other things that you just don't need them in, where cotton could really be a better substitute. And that's kind of where we're focused on, really.
That's
is
great.
How do we kind of just like take them out of the things they don't need to be in, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's a great plan too, because it does seem like we are in this all or nothing phase, and we're not saying, hey, don't ever use that, but just use it when you can.
Use it less. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So, okay, here's a weird question for you.
Okay.
I'm a now new needle pointer. This is, I would say, it's my granny hobby, but I am a granny. So,
okay. That's amazing. Yeah.
So, I occasionally, so I use a lot of cotton thread.
Okay.
And occasionally there will be a very thin little piece of plastic in my, and it will just poke up, and like, I'll try to it's definitely woven in there, that little into the
probably
thread.
Just some contamination and
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something for us to be aware of, because where does that come from? Probably, it could have come, like, somebody could have thrown away a plastic bag and it could wind up in a field somewhere. And, and to mention that farmers get docked for that kind of stuff. Like,
they totally do.
Don't be throwing the plastic out, because and that's part of why, because something like that can really mess up a meal. Really. And it's just so funny, because I've seen that twice now, and I've just been like, this is so bizarre.
I agree.
They're everywhere.
And it is everywhere. It is all over. It is everywhere. Right. So
it is. Well, thanks, Liz.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
To be here.
And safe travels to you and all
you.
the places that you go. And friends, thanks for joining us again for another episode of Conservation Stories. And we'll have all of this very fascinating information linked for you. And we'll put some stuff up on our social media so you can easily see it. And we will look forward to visiting with you again on another episode of Conservation Stories.